Hey guys, it's Emma Vigling with TYT Politics, and I'm just curious if the Democrats grew some balls. Did they drink their Red Bull today? Did they have a couple cups of coffee? Did they smoke meth to make themselves more prone to risk-taking? Although I don't even think it's a risk when you have a demographic and ideological advantage throughout the country, but that's what the Democrats see everything as a risk if they stand up for anything whatsoever. But it seems like they're actually doing something about this, because some of Trump's nominees are extremely problematic. Obviously, Tom Price and Stephen Mnuchin are in the top 5, I would say, of problematic, and Betsy DeVos is up there as well, although she's going to get confirmed. But the Democrats are attempting to fight, and when you only have 4 states that you control, I think California, Hawaii, and there's 2 others I can't remember off the top of my head right now, and the Republicans have the presidency and have the House and the Senate, you gotta at least attempt to fight, or basically you're just a rock on the side of the road and you have no say in the government whatsoever. So I'm happy that the Democrats are starting to fight. Right now, the Democrats on the Senate Finance Committee, which include Senator Claire McCaskill, who's of Missouri, Sherrod Brown, and Senator Wyden, some of the names off the top of my head, that are on the Senate Finance Committee are fighting these 2 votes for Stephen Mnuchin and Tom Price. So basically, because both of these guys lied to their faces, and now they have no choice but to oppose them. In a surprise turn of events, Senate Democrats announced Tuesday morning that they are boycotting a committee vote on 2 of President Donald Trump's cabinet nominees, drawing fury from Republicans across the aisle. Good. The Senate Finance Committee was set to vote on the nominations of Representative Tom Price to lead the Department of Health and Human Services and Stephen Mnuchin for Treasury Secretary. But minutes after the vote was scheduled to take place, Democrats on the panel convened an impromptu news conference to announce that they refused to participate in the proceeding, all as their Republican colleagues were waiting in a hearing room down the hallway. Senator Ron Wyden, the top Democrat on the Finance Committee, pointed to what he called truly alarming news that surfaced on Monday, referring to a Wall Street Journal report that said Price had received a special discounted rate of stocks at an Australian pharmaceutical company called Innate Immunotherapeutics. So a lot of this has to do with the fact that both Price and Mnuchin lied to them during their confirmation hearings. I believe Mnuchin lied in a written statement in the questions that were submitted to him. Republicans have blocked the Supreme Court nominee for President Obama without having Merrick Garland lie to them, and they did so with basically just saying, oh, it's improper for Obama to nominate someone right after poor Antonin Scalia died, which is like the worst excuse I've ever heard in my life. But at least the Democrats have to have some sort of reason to fight. And if you may recall, I reported in the past on Tom Price's immense corruption when he was merely a congressman, or he still is, before he was applying for this position, taking pharmaceutical campaign donations and then enriching his donors. That's just regular corruption in Washington. He went a step further. He invested in those companies that were donating to his campaign. So the legislation that he introduced, it benefited himself twofold. One, he enriched his donors and got them a payback for how they gave to his campaign. Secondly, he personally enriched himself. He lined his own pockets because he is invested in the very companies that were donating to his campaign. So that's some real corruption here. But some more corruption came to light Monday in a Wall Street Journal article where he also lied to the Senate Finance Committee's faces, and that's why Sherrod Brown is so livid. I will read a Business Insider article summarizing the Wall Street Journal article because I lost my password to the Wall Street Journal subscription. Tom Price, President Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services, received a private placement investment available only to a limited number of investors in the U.S., according to the Wall Street Journal. Price told the U.S. Senate Finance Committee in his confirmation hearings that shares of Innate were available to every single individual that was an investor at the time, but according to Innate's CEO, only a few U.S. investors were allowed to buy stock at a discounted price. The deal was available to all Australian and New Zealand-based shareholders. The Journal reported that fewer than 20 U.S. investors purchased this stock, which was given at a 12% discount. Price's total investment was worth between $50,000 and $100,000, according to the nominee's financial disclosures. Listen to the brazenness of that. He just lied to the faces of the Democrats who normally would have just rolled over and taken it. He could have at least admitted it, but not today. The Democrats aren't going to take it actually today. And the same thing happened with Stephen Mnuchin. So Mnuchin for Treasury Secretary, Elizabeth Warren, despite not being on the Senate Finance Committee, has been quite active in her anti-Mnuchin campaigning. Sherrod Brown has also been quite active. Elizabeth Warren is not on the Senate Finance Committee, and I can't figure out why. Maybe because the Senate Finance Committee just wants to play patty cakes a lot of the time with these financial institutions, and Elizabeth Warren likes to lay the hammer down on them on a regular basis. Here's how Mnuchin pissed off people like Elizabeth Warren and the Democrats on the Senate Finance Committee. An Ohio newspaper reported that Stephen Mnuchin, President Donald Trump's nominee to be Treasury Secretary, misled senators about foreclosures by One West Bank when he was the chief executive, providing more fuel to the opponents ahead of a contentious committee confirmation vote scheduled for Tuesday, which, by the way, has now been boycotted. The Columbus Dispatch reported Sunday that Mnuchin denied in written responses to questions from the Senate Finance Committee that One West engaged in so-called robo-signing of mortgage documents. The paper said its analysis of nearly 4 dozen foreclosure cases in Ohio's Franklin County in 2010 showed the bank frequently used robo-signers. So what robo-signing is basically what was decried after the financial crash. It's when employees at these investment firms just basically sign foreclosures and foreclosure statements and documents in mass, overwhelmingly, without really reviewing the specifics of those documents, which is obviously problematic. They're just pushing them through a machine and not tailoring them to a specific case. But when you're a greedy corporation that doesn't really care about foreclosing on people's homes, then you don't give a damn about looking at the specifics of people's cases. And that's why Elizabeth Warren raised hell about it. But let me go into further into the evidence that is against Mnuchin in this robo-signing accusation. The Columbus Dispatch cited a foreclosure involving a mortgage signed by Erica Johnson Seck, a One West vice president, who said in a deposition in a 2009 Florida case that she signed an average of 750 documents a week. In written questions to Mnuchin, Senator Robert Casey asked if One West engaged in robo-signing. One West Bank did not robo-sign documents, Mnuchin said. He added that the bank was the only one to successfully complete an independent foreclosure review process by federal banking regulators looking into robo-signing allegations. Elizabeth Warren has been active in this fight against Mnuchin and led a forum with the victims of this robo-signing and the victims of the One West Bank, and this is kind of her bread and butter. She's been leading forums in a kind of Bernie-esque way quietly, and it hasn't been the grandstanding of Cory Booker standing up to Jeff Sessions because the media doesn't cover the financial institution forums and things like that. But she has been doing so quietly behind the scenes, which I really commend her for.
Unfortunately, judging by Mr. Mnuchin's tenure as head of One West Bank, there is significant evidence that he has no interest in working for the benefit of all Americans. Mr. Mnuchin and One West did something quite extraordinary. They acted decisively to boot tens of thousands of families out of their homes all across this country. Foreclosures happen in an economic crisis, but One West was different. It quickly gained a reputation as a foreclosure machine, even when compared to the other financial institutions that aggressively and illegally tossed families out of their houses after the financial crisis. One West was notorious for its belligerence and for its cruelty. And 8 years after the crash, they're still doing it.
So she went off, and she also had a very powerful testimony from one specific woman who was affected by this robo-signing and these foreclosures.
I called them, and One West confirmed that they had not received any of my loan any of my returned loan modification agreement. I knew right away this wasn't right because they had cashed the check for the first modified payment in the same FedEx envelope. That they managed to cash the check but completely neglect the loan modification agreement, again, the same envelope, is absolutely outrageous. I received the second loan modification offer later that month. The terms were almost identical to the offer made to me in May. So I quickly signed the offer, mailed it in with another check. In October, I got a letter exactly like the one earlier saying they had not received the loan modification paperwork and that the modification was no longer valid. Yet as they did the first time, they cashed the cashier's check that I sent in. On the evening of December 3rd, 2009, I received a knock on my door from a man that introduced himself. Apologize. As a new owner of my property. And in March of 2010, I received a final notice telling me that I had 5 days to leave my condo, pack up 10 years of my life, and be out.
Maybe we can count on the Democrats to fight when they have actually no power. But I'll take it, you know? As long as they're fighting. I love it. And again, let's be cynical here. Maybe we can count on the Democrats to fight when the corruption is this blatant in the case of Tom Price, or when the harming of consumers is so obvious, like Mnuchin and One West Bank. When it's that egregious, maybe the Democrats will stand up, but not always. I try to remain optimistic with dashes of cynicism in there.